3PNR with Adam R. This episode of 3PNR is featured on the UnX Network. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. And on this episode, I have Earl Grey of MUFON. Earl, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good, Adam. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being on. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Let's start off with what put you on this path.
Sure, we can talk about that. I usually go by Earl Grey Anderson. I'm actually the state director for MUFON in Southern California. We do have the highest number of UFOs reported in the world here, and a lot of stuff going on off of the coast. You know, a lot of stuff near Catalina Island, the USOs. It seems like every week or two, I have something that's being sighted in that area. The way that I got into this, I'm sort of secondhand. My origin story begins with my mom. My mom worked for the Howard Hughes, the millionaire, back in the 1950s. She was one of two private secretaries that he had. And in my mom's work, back then, you know, as usual, Hughes was a bit of a misanthropist. A misanthrope. He would keep to himself. He would talk to people through an intercom system. The whole time my mom worked for him, she only saw him once, and it was by accident. When he would leave the facility, it was the Sepulveda Boulevard facility of Hughes Aircraft. Everything in that area is named after Howard Hughes now, and there's a reason for that. That's where he had his aerospace company. And they would usually give an all clear after he had left the building. They had a long hallway that would lead out to the car park. Well, apparently it was a little slow one day, and they gave the all clear, and my mom opened up the door, started walking through this long hallway to the car park, and there was Howard Hughes at the end of the hallway. He was just opening the door up, so he was sort of captured in the light there. And she said he looked very Chaplin-esque in a way. He had a hat on. He had his briefcase on. He was suddenly stopped walking. He looked shocked that somebody was actually behind him in the hallway. And then he scurried back. He scurried out. That was the only time that she saw him. But she talked with him every day. And in her work for him, she was a stenographer for all of his high-powered meetings. He was sort of the original military-industrial complex guy that Truman and others warned us about. But that was Howard Hughes. That's where that kind of started out. And he sent my mom on a strange mission, I guess you'd call it. And she told me about this when I was 5 years old. Now, we all knew who Mom had worked for. Mom worked for Hughes up until I was born, which was May 29th, 1958. And her leaving Hughes sort of coincided with my birth. But my mom said that in the mid-1950s, she was sent out to the middle of the desert with a little security detail. She didn't say which desert. She just said it was the Great American Desert. She was not willing to tell me more than that. But she said that there was this little shack that they took her to, and you would go into this shack, and there was an elevator. And this elevator went down. There was no building above it. It was middle of the desert. It didn't look like much, just looked like a pump house or something, my mom said. So she got into the elevator with a couple of security guys, and she started feeling scared. She felt butterflies in her stomach, was how she described it. She felt vertigo. This thing kept on going down, and it kept going down. When it finally came to a stop, the doors opened up on just a bustling city that was under the desert. My mom said that they got around in like little golf cart type carts, that there were many, many people working there. A lot of German rocket scientists were working there. She said that they had a movie theater, that they had cafes, that they had a barber shop. She even had a guy that could perm and do her hair for her when she was working down there. She said that that they were working on esoteric projects. She didn't really go into it more than that. But my mom also, she also spoke about alien life. She spoke about it with authority, like it was a known. As far as talking about this stuff, my mom clammed up after she told me that initial story back in 1963, but I kept bringing it up. And she finally told me, because I started telling, I actually mentioned it in class when I was in fourth grade. And a teacher at a parent-teacher conference wanted to ask my mom about this wild story that I was talking about, where my mom worked under the desert and that aliens were real. And my mom had to tell her that, well, Earl has a big imagination. And I got the lecture when she drove, I was like playing in the little playground there while she had her conference, and she drove us home. And I remember my mom said, Earl, that people don't know about this. And when I told you about this, you were just a little boy. I was sure that you would forget about it. I'm kind of horrified that you didn't forget about it, because you're not supposed to know about it. And you certainly aren't supposed to talk about it. You can get your mother into a lot of trouble. As I got older, I would try to get my mom to talk a little bit more, and once in a while, I'd be successful. My mom suffered from cancers. She kept getting non-metastatic cancers. They would just sort of be all over her body as if she had been irradiated. And later on, I found out that a lot of people that have worked in our DUMBs, our deep underground military bases, that seems to be something that happens. That somehow or another they're exposed to radiation.
What was that acronym you just used? I like that.
It's a DUMB. They're known as DUMBs, and apparently we have quite a few of them. It's DUMB. It's a deep underground military base.
I'm going to refer to that. I like that.
Yeah, if you read, Richard Sauter has written about 3, 4, 5 books on the subject. They're usually not about UFOs. I think he finally broached the UFO subject in his last book. But there were about 3 of them where he just talked about deep underground bases. And it's a thing, and we have a bunch of them. We apparently started revving up, production of these back in the, during World War II, especially during the Cold War, when we really had stuff to hide. And when Sputnik went up, of course, everything went underground, because now, the Soviet Union and other countries had the ability to spy on us. So, but we've been doing this for a long time, and my mom was very matter of fact about it. I've talked with Richard Sauter. He told me that actually at Area 51, it's something interesting, that a blueprint came out. There's a FOIA request that went in, and there is an early blueprint of the underground sections of Area 51. And Howard Hughes did have a lab in the earliest, it would have been 1955. So the timing is kind of exact, and it would have been perfect as far as locale goes, because my mom was living here in Southern California. So it's just kind of a, quick trip from here. So I often wonder if perhaps my mom was working in Area 51, but I don't know. I mean, it could have been White Sands. She talked about New Mexico as well in her work with Hughes. But she also, my mom at one point, after we saw Star Wars, she had gotten a clean cancer screening. I was 19 years old, and this new movie was playing. It was 1977. I said, Mom, let's go see this film. Let's go celebrate. So we had lunch and we went to see this movie, and my mom started talking. And I think it's because of where we were. I think it's because, her cancers, that she knew that those were caused from her work. And she had a good positive screening. And the movie had moved her emotionally. And she said, when the curtains came up and the lights started going on in the theater, my mom said that, son, Star Wars is not far-fetched. The different races and the different spaceships, the craft, all that. She said, that is really true, that our government knows this. They're never going to tell anybody about this because it's a very deep secret. But, Star Wars is realer than you'll ever know. And that almost became a challenge to me, Adam. As the years went on, realer than you will ever know, it's kind of like, well, why shouldn't I be able to know this? I want to know this. And I've always been obsessed with it. My mom, even before she told me about this, I was always, climbing up the swing set and waving at the sky. And, my parents would say, who are you waving and singing at? And it'd be the space people, that's who I was looking for.
Hey, I'm in agreement. So, I still write, when it says religion on applications and other paperwork, I write Jedi.
I love it.
I still do that. I make room for a lot. Now your mom's in the desert, right? And
yes.
So hear this theory out. I'm going to base this on what Commander Fravor saw and the Tic Tac incident. I've had time to evaluate that. And they're saying these objects came from 80,000 feet to 0 feet over the surface of water. Now imagine David Fravor's, him and his co-pilot are seeing something under the waves that's large. Mm-hmm. And so here's what I imagine. And by the way, I don't speak from science, I speak from imagination, right? This is all theory. Mm-hmm. They're lowering from 80,000 feet to the surface of the water, where they are then transferred to another underwater thing, which then the underwater vehicle goes into this. It's all rock face down there, right? And
yes.
that could very well be the entrance to an underground base. And yes. Bear in mind, California, New Mexico, Denver, Nevada. There's a deep rock bed. It's very feasible for there to be a large system base under there with railways. It's very possible. And
they've had illustrations of things like that since the 1950s, that would be the most secure underground base that you could construct, would be one that was actually under the ocean. And yes, you could connect that with tunnels to the mainland, and you could also connect that, you could have a port that you could reach by a submarine, I would love to send dive teams down there until we found it, because I'm positive there's something down there.
Yeah,
I recently had lunch with Kevin Day, and we picked each other's brains for a long time about the Tic Tac, because I get so many reports. I got one report, a very, very good MUFON report that I gave an unknown UAP disposition to just recently. That was it was from a commercial pilot and his wife. They were on the east side of Catalina Island camping out in the campsite. And he saw this giant gold ball come out of the water and shoot up, hundreds of feet into the air. And this object did like this dance, like a crosswise dance back and forth. And then it shot down under the waves again, and then came back out yet again, did its little dance, and then went underwater. Now, this guy is a commercial pilot. He kept his sighting to himself for 3 years because he didn't want to be grounded. But he and his wife recently had a baby, and he is a house husband right now. So he quit his job as a pilot. And he said, finally, I can tell somebody about this with no worries. 3 good witnesses. And this guy, as far as line of sight, dead reckoning goes, I couldn't find somebody who was better. He had the latitude, the longitude exact for me. He had those worked out. He knew that it was 10 miles off of the shore of Catalina. It was exactly between Catalina and the shoreline of the mainland there, Seal Beach area, more or less.
Yeah, that's a very popular spot.
Oh yeah. And this, this guy's his sighting is not the only one that's in that exact same area. And wonder upon wonders.
Before you go to that next one,
the exact coordinates of the Tic Tac.
Earl, before you go to that next one, real quick, before you go to that next one. So the objects that are going from 80,000 feet to 1 foot, and then the Tic Tac, I depict that as a transport system, right? It's taking them from whatever's in space down to the, as I was elaborating on earlier. What you described to me a moment ago with the gold orb that goes up and left and right and back in the water, let me tell you what comes to mind right away. They're testing a new vehicle. Will it suffice? Is it going to go in and out of the water without issue? Is it going to lose it's their, you know what I mean? It sounds like they're testing it to make sure it's adequate enough to continue on its purpose. That's exactly what that sounds like.
Could be. Kevin saw these objects. He was the radar deck of the Princeton, and he saw them for 5-6 days before they finally agreed to send out a squadron of planes. So this was happening. He said that there were like 180 objects that they saw, or at least, it was the same object, but it was doing this maneuver 180 times that they recorded. So yes, perhaps it was a transport system. Perhaps they were transporting people, beings, or what have you.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
hypothesis.
I say this to a lot of people. I repeat it a lot. I don't mean to, but I do. When people like, there's a lot of inconsistency. There's triangles or this. Well, how many different vehicles do we have running around the roads and flying in the airs? We have to have different models for different purpose. It has to be that way. And that could speak to, forget just aliens that are here. Anywhere you go in the known universe, if there's intelligence and they're building something, it's going to be purposed for its job. And it's going to look different from what others look like. That's just the way of it. And that's why I think strongly the Tic Tac, I think that's a transport system, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that throws me off a little bit is that it did show up in his cap point.
Yes.
I found that a little odd, which made me wonder.
It did meet them at the cap point, and that's not only longitude and latitude, but it's also that point in elevation.
Right, an exact point.
So 3 dimensions in that exact point. So
right.
we were being told something there. So I'm not sure if, there are many attributes to the Tic Tac that make me think that it's not ours, that it's, extraterrestrial or extra dimensional. Other things about it, perhaps it's ours, or perhaps it's co-creation of ours in some other culture. Who knows?
Perhaps, because I definitely don't think it's ours, because the application itself, right? And you're talking, don't forget, the Tic Tac is a recent thing viewed by our military. But the item itself has been seen for forever. It's cigar shape. It's only until pilots got up close that they coined that term Tic Tac. Many years ago, it was a cylindrical thing. It was a cigar shape, and they were never close enough to identify it. But now we have a professional, eyes on, right? So it's a lot older than what we know.
Cigar-shaped sightings that go back to the 1940s, some of them, and one guy I spoke with recently. Wonderful witness, is getting way up there in age, but still bright as a tack, sharp as a tack, and bright as a light bulb. And he and a friend saw a missile-shaped object that was just hovering over this area in Echo Park, and this was back in the early 1950s. I think it was 1951. And these guys were playing toboggan on the ice plant there. They'd go to the top of a hill with their cardboard boxes, and they had toboggan down to the bottom. And they're doing this, and they see this thing hanging over, just evading gravity. It was like 20 feet long and maybe, a good 7 feet in diameter, in a perfect cigar shape, except it had a nose on it, is how he explained it. It was a chrome color and no markings, no windows. And so being the, little 10-year-old boys that they're waving at it. They're thinking, it's right out of a science fiction movie. They climb back to the top of the hill. They get back in their cardboard boxes, and they toboggan again down the ice plant. And there it is. It's still sitting there, hanging, 7 feet in the air. And he said that this thing tilted up 90 degrees, and then it shot off so fast with not a sound, not a flame or nothing like that. It just shot straight off into the sky, into the vanishing point.
What year was that again?
It was about 1951. I could find it for you.
No. The good news of that is, this brings me back to another point. I'm glad you said 1951. You said it angled up at 90 degrees and then took off. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now that's said, Bob Lazar, 80s, 90s, described these vehicles, how they would perform. It would rotate up and take off. 2015, the U.S. military record what they call the gimbal, where it rotates belly first to take off. 1951, witnesses see something, rotate 90 degrees and take off. There's consistency there.
How about that, huh?
Yeah.
Bruce Maccabee says the same thing. He says that the Tic Tac is nothing new, that there have been objects like this seen for, many, many, many years. Now, I had a recent sighting with 2 guys in motorcycles that are up in the San Diego area that had a very, very similar sighting to this one that the 2 boys had in 1951, except this happened just recently. It happened a couple of months ago. They were riding their dirt bikes in the desert area, and they came across something that looked exactly the exact same description. And this UFO is not in the MUFON journal. This is the first time I've talked about it on any kind of podcast. So
Awesome.
It was not a known sighting. But we recently had one. Two guys that are in their 50s, goofing around on their motorcycles, and they came upon the same thing. They stopped their motorbikes. They're sitting there looking at it, did the same thing. It went up to a 90-degree angle and shot off into the vanishing point without a sound. Not a sound. Yeah.
I mean,
not a sonic boom either. That's the other thing.
That's the part that every time I hear that, because no matter what object you put through our air at a high rate of speed, it's going to break the sound barrier, which then tells me that this is utilizing something. When they say moving, I want people to understand, when something's altering gravity or physics, it means just that. It's not applying itself to our physics. How it's moving makes me think that in that rotation, it's altering the space around it. So there's no air to break. There's nothing in front of it. It's moving from point A to point B with zero disturbance.
Correctamundo. You're absolutely right, Adam. I've thought the exact same thing. They're using their physics. They're bringing their physics with them. Yeah. They're bringing their physics.
And this is why
when people have a face-to-face encounter, people they'll experience something called the Oz effect, where everything becomes very, very quiet. Usually the room will flood with light, and there's a shift in reality. There's a psychological shift, and there's a physical shift. And I think that they create their own little bubble universe where they can do their thing, where they can go and they can do experiments on you. They can take you through the wall into their craft or whatever they're going to do. And people don't see it because it's in another little universe that they create there, that they create a little bubble. And I think that the same thing happens is the reason why you don't hear a thunderclap when these UFOs take off hypersonically. They're creating a little bubble universe around themselves to where our physics, they can get around.
Right.
Maybe it's making a thunderclap. Maybe somebody's hearing a sonic boom in another universe, but we're not hearing it here.
Well, I have some theories on that too. We'll get to that. In fact, I'll cover it just real brief. When we're testing nuclear weapons in a desert, you're playing with the power of the sun. You're altering the physics, right? What's to say you're not setting that bomb off in the desert and then killing an entire civilization in a parallel universe, right?
Yeah.
like genocide at a high level. We're not even aware of it. But to that point, though, are you familiar with Christina Gomez from Shifting the Paradigm?
Yes, sure.
She's got a great show. And tonight she talked about airplanes disappearing, and I listened in on it. And then, everything I do, again, no science, all my imagination and theory. I hear this, and then I think about how these UFOs move about. And then I think about primitive airplanes back in the day that are flying around or disappearing squadrons at a time. Who's to say that you didn't cross, what's the best way to put this? Like, you went into a jet stream, Top Gun, right? You went into a jet stream, now you're gone. You're in a parallel. You've vanished from this existence. And, or, maybe it's, we don't know the power of lightning to its full extent. Maybe it opened up something that otherwise we wouldn't see. But she goes into great detail on subjects, like really good detail.
Fantastic. I know she has a good show. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I've heard all good things about Christina.
Yeah, shout out for Christina. She's on point. And she's very calm. I'm excited all the time. I can hardly contain my energy most times, especially on this subject, because for me, there's too many people out there that are like, nay, no, not possible. Let me answer a question for you from earlier. Why is our government not telling us everything? It's a very simple answer. It's because we don't like each other yet. It's because we have weird boundaries. We have religion and politics and nation. We have all these divides. We can hardly get along in the same state. There's no shot that another race comes here and we're open arms. Hey guys, how you doing? We're not going to do that. We're horrible people at nature still. It's terrible to say it, but it is.
Who's handling who are our ambassadors to the stars? Because I know who they are. I can tell you exactly who they are.
I hope they're all Elon minded. That's what I hope.
No, it's the Pentagon. That's who has contact. That's who has contact. Yeah. That's what I hear. I hear this from very, very good sources. I mean, Colm Kelleher, I've heard this from, who I know very well. I mean, the Pentagon, I think personally, and Colm would disagree with this. I'm positive he'd disagree quite heartily, as would Bob Bigelow and these other guys. But I think that the military is the wrong ambassador. That definitely you should have the military involved, because you don't want to be stupid, and there is always a risk. There's a risk from the stars, because we're a risk. There are probably risks out there, so you can't be ignorant and stupid about it. But if you are meeting people from another world, you want to have somebody like a Gandhi or a Albert Schweitzer or Einstein or some. You don't want, the head of the Air Force, or somebody that's well, it's the wrong people to be our ambassadors. And I'll keep saying, I probably am cutting my nose off to spite my face saying that, because the people I deal with probably won't like hearing me say that, but that's how it goes. I think that it's the wrong ambassadors.
I agree. I think we should have a panel.
Good ambassador. I know I am. I'm a good ambassador. I know a lot of people that are very good ambassadors, but the military and the Department of Defense, no, not so much.
This is going to sound bad.
We pay them to be paranoid,
right?
And they're supposed to be paranoid for us. But right now they're coloring the whole phenomenon with paranoia and fear, and it's not all threat assessment. That should just be an aspect of how we look at this. We need to have many different people with their hands on this, and not just the military. And as far as I know, it's just the Department of Defense, DARPA, and the military that has their hands on this right now.
Here's what I think. This is my personal opinion. We do need a panel of everyone from everywhere if we're ever going to have communication. I live by my own kind of creed, my way of life is, if you want a religion, humanity. If you want a race, human. If you want a point of origin, Earth. It should be that simple. Because if you approach an extremely intelligent being from another, and to imagine that they came here from somewhere else, you understand, they're working as a colony. They're working as a species. There's no individuality amongst them for them to achieve that goal. So unless their goal is to conquer, that's a different story. But anyway, the point I make is, you have to approach them apolitical, and I hate to say this, but without religion. You can't have division. You can't approach them as well, I'm a Republican and I'm a Christian. All they care about is, what's your species and what is your contribution? What do you do for your people? And then to that point, I say this a lot, Earl. If I think we're under a long-term study, personally, I think we're the National Geographic's channel for the higher intelligence. Yeah,
I'm kind of a zoo theorist myself, to tell you the truth.
I'll tell you why. Because
makes sense.
If you go into the wild, right, and you're doing a film, and you're watching the lions, and you see one of the cub lions being attacked by another predator, you can't get involved. It's nature. You got to stand back. But if you run over one of those animals with your car, you're obligated to get involved and help that animal, which is what I think would happen to Travis Walton. I think he got too close. I think he got hurt, and they had to fix they had to fix it. They're obligated. So, I think we're under a long-term study. There's no doubt in my mind of that. Or at least,
what do you do if you are the, one of the scientists, one of the people that tends a natural animal habitat? I mean, you'll go and you'll tranquilize your animals every now and then.
Well, yeah.
You'll you'll tag them somehow, like an implant. You'll keep track of them, and you'll take them every now and then. You do the same thing. You'll hover over them in your helicopter. You'll shoot a dart at them, and see how they're doing. Check them out, and then let them out in the wild again. They wake up, and if they spoke English, if they could think that way, it would probably sound like most abductees sound.
I agree.
Experience,
Earl, if you were walking in a park, and I say this a lot, I'm playing the broken record. Forgive me, everybody. You're walking in a park. You see an ant pile, right? And I hear us referred to as ants all the time. It drives me nuts. So we might be ants to them. So be it. But here's what I say to that. You're walking in the park. You see an ant pile. They're driving cars. They're flying planes. They're throwing bombs at each other. You're closing that park off. You're watching that ant colony indefinitely. You're going to want to see how they evolve. What's the next step? And if you keep things to scale, like if they're blowing things up, so be it. Because to scale, it's only going to harm parts of the park. It's when it becomes a threat to us is when we have to step in. But I think we're under observation. And like I said, they're going to watch our evolution until we hit a point of where I think they've gotten to that point. We could actually speak to them as a whole, not just their government or not just whomever we selected, as a whole. But until we end racism and divisions and nonsensical Roman time political nonsense, it's not going to happen. There's no way.
We've made very little progress, spiritually as a race. It's just very disheartening. Sometimes is the best word I can think of. It is just disheartening to see, because we know better, and it's like we're a bunch of kids that got the matchbook out, and our science is way up here, but we're still attacking each other like a bunch of barbarians and over religion, over. I mean, that was the last major war that we were in that lasted longer than any other war. It was against the Middle East, and there was a lot of religious elements to it. They'll say it's different, but it was how dare God put our oil under your country,
Yeah, really. I mean, for crying out loud, every religion preaches the same positive message. We get the negative from it. For what? I can't understand.
I don't know why we pick up on the negative stuff, but that's what it seems in every single culture, ours included. That's what happens. Jesus is the Prince of Peace is what he was called. A very, very peaceful person. He wasn't stupid. He said that mothers and fathers and sons would fight over each other because of him, and that is true. That he did also, bring a sort of a sword of opinion with himself, but. It seems like, every single religion has their crusaders, it's all pretty much the same. And when it comes down to it, it's human behavior. And I think something's going to have to change us, is going to have to cause us to be, so that we feel like we are one. And I think that, that the way I see things, Ray Kurzweil has that wonderful book called The Singularity. I know my friend Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son, is a big proponent of that book as well. And it's really quite an interesting book on future sociology for humanity. He believes that we're going to change completely and entirely. But to do that, we're going to become our computers, that we are going to become connected with each other, just the way that we are with the internet. Well, it's only a quick step to getting that chip and I may recoil against it and you may recoil against it, but the next generations aren't going to recoil against that. They're going to see that as something that's desirable. And that may be what causes us to stop killing each other when you can read somebody else's mind, when we truly do become telepathic. Yeah. That seems to be our disability as a race. With every other, all of the stories and accounts that we hear of human and alien contact, they're always surprised how untelepathic we are, how we never really developed that ability. There are humans that can do it. The FBI, the CIA, they're certainly aware of people that can do that. They have remote viewers and et cetera. You can read about that.
Yeah, I've followed a lot of
very well known. But it's a rarity still. And there's a reason why when people see these entities, they have little tiny mouths and they never speak. It's always mind-to-mind communication. We as a race have a disability. And that's what it is. And it causes us to feel like every man's an island, that your neighbor is you're not connected to. And we're going to have to get over that if we're to join the space age. If there's ever to be something like you see in Star Trek, where there's a federation and we're welcome to join, we're going to have to become like that. It may happen with our computers. We may become our computers. That may, and again, the idea scares me as well. But humans, the way they are right now, aren't going to last much longer. Some huge sea change has to take place. And I think that that's probably it. And going off planet may give us the impetus to actually take that extra step. We're here still living in the cradle. The Earth is a cradle of humanity, but you can't live in the cradle forever, right? The Russian rocketeer Tolstoyevsky, I can never say his name. Tolstoyevsky said that in his book, The Brick Moon, back in the late 1800s. He was already talking about space stations and orbital living orbitally back then. That it was the best thing for humans to get off of the world, that this is a cradle, And I agree. I think that we should be colonizing the moon at least. It looks like we're doing that. I have high hopes for that.
Well, we need a proving ground. Right? We need a proving ground. We have to do that. Yes. I mean, yes. I admire the fact that we want to go to Mars, but until we could, go to and from the moon with ease, again, it's small steps. You got to take small steps to understand anyway.
Yeah, the moon's right there, unless we are literally being held at bay from going there. And some people I know have that opinion. But I know people that worked on the Apollo project and stuff. And so I know that we went there, and that's, the people that say that we didn't go to the moon are conspiracy theorists. But, we may have been kind of held back. I don't know, but I don't, I guess the next 10 years is going to be the proof of the pudding for us.
I think the next 5 years,
living on the moon yet, then I would say maybe there is a force that's keeping us stuck here, which is a scary thought.
Yeah, I think in the next 5 years we're going to see this progress.
Yeah,
and,
I think so too.
I'll tell you what. Here's what I think. One, I'm going to give you a theory of mine. I think the visitors we have currently, the gray aliens anyway, the typical ones. My theory is that they are an advanced robotic, machine with some sort of biology on top, but the consciousness uploaded. And I think that people say that they're speaking telepathically, I think it's their version of Bluetooth.
Yeah, could be. I think of them as perhaps they have avatar bodies, because it's kind of too great of a coincidence that, every single culture that we're coming in contact so far with is bipedal, 2 arms and a head. I mean, I'm sure that some of these races probably look more like an octopus, but they've learned to transfer their actions to another body, and that may be what the grays are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because if you can't really distinct them from one another, there's nothing identifiable to from one to the next.
No sexual characteristics.
Yeah. No, not even height. I mean, for the smaller grays, the height is consistent across the board. Their build, everything about just identical. Like here on Earth, there's thin people, there's heavy people, there's different color people, eyes, and them straight across the board. And even in their eyes, like one of my theories are the eyes are scanners and sensors.
Yeah.
And, right now, they're benign. Whatever's observing us is benign. We notice because they've been around for a very long time. We're not wiped out, because if they were going to wipe us out, they would have did it before we got to the point of nuclear power. What we should be concerned for is eventually the ones that stumble across us. They're not going to share the same idea of let's watch them, because they might be burnt out of resources. We don't, something that stumbles here by chance, nothing's just going to go across the vastness of space indefinitely. So I heard this, I heard on Lex Friedman, it would take something like 10,000 generations to cross the Milky Way or the galaxy. And you think about that, whatever's making that journey, how limited are the resources on that gigantic ship? And then when it gets here, is it going to be so interested in, like, are these things interesting to watch? Like the ones we have now. And this is why I say what's here now is an advanced robotic system or even an avatar with the consciousness uploaded, because they're at that point you're immortal and you don't need resources and you don't need sustenance, Yeah. So they could watch indefinitely. They have that luxury. But something that stumbles here and it's biological, it's not going to share that same view.
Amazing. We agree on a lot of stuff here, Adam. I'm sort of amazed, because usually it doesn't go that way, but I'm absolutely with you on that, and I think that you're probably correct. I think you're probably
correct. Because I think in terms of myself.
Small grays, I think, may actually be truly maybe just biological robots. They probably churn them out from a factory somewhere, So
because think about it.
They don't communicate. They're just like ants. They're like worker bees.
Yeah, they're the drone of the colony.
Yes, exactly.
And
I don't see any intelligence there except on a limited basis.
And then people ask why bipedal? Well, it's the most functional, right? It's easy. If right now on Mars we have rovers and we have a helicopter, but if we can make a bipedal robot, we can control with, say, an avatar state, or we could just control it that way, and it can move around like we do. Better believe we're doing that. It's more.
If we were an aquative, species, then they may have picked, like a whale-like form or a dolphin-like form. Interact with us by. But no, we live on a planet, and it's the intelligence that evolved here is bipedal, and that's how we deal with gravity, and it's how we have mobility and perambulate, and so it's the best model for that.
Yeah, you look at a head. The head is, even for humans. Let's be real. For human beings, our head is our computer. That's where our computer is stored and protected. The rest of that's your machine. And if you look at the gray alien, that's an enormous head. Why? That's a big computer. It's got sensors in the eyes, scanners in the eyes. It's got to be able to communicate from whatever distance it needs via their form of Bluetooth. That's a big computer. It makes sense for the head to be large, which is why when I hear
eyes, that's light gathering power right there. The large black eyes.
Yeah.
That's what you want. If you look at anything for, infrared gathering power, it's going to look much like the black lenses that you see on the gray's eyes. So yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I look at their eyes, and that's what gave me my conclusion. I think of military applications. What would we do if we were going to build something like that to go out there and do what it's doing? And first thing in my mind, you got to go to anything you want to think about military application, because the military will have it long before the public gets it, like GPS and other things, So, and then, there's the other thing too, what you said. What if they are in an ocean world? And if you think about why dolphins, they're really intelligent dolphins, extremely. Mm-hmm. Why haven't they evolved? Well, they're trapped to their environment. They don't have limbs. They can't, even if they were to build something, they couldn't escape their environment. They are trapped.
Can't manipulate their environment. You're correct. You might have very, very intelligent cultures that are like dolphins, but they probably wouldn't evolve technology.
Right.
They might eventually evolve arms and something that can manipulate the external world with. My guess is that they certainly would eventually.
Yeah.
If they had that intelligence.
They would still have to build a craft that could escape their environment, though. And that proves difficult for us without the being in water, and that the difficulty that surrounds that, right?
Well, we're still trying to escape our environment. We're doing low Earth orbit, and Elon Musk, he sent some tourists up into a high Earth orbit, which was very impressive recently. Got some really beautiful pictures back. But this is certainly didn't happen in 2001 like Arthur Clarke and Stanley Kubrick thought it would. I wish it had. I was kind of expecting that, but no, I don't think I'm going to get out to outer space myself, unless one of my friends, quote unquote, out there, talking to my interstellar friends out there, if you're out there, wants to give me a ride. I'd love that. But so far, I don't know that we're going to get that, it's going to become accessible to us. But I could be wrong. I mean, it depends. I mean, things can ramp up pretty quickly. I think it might be possible within 20 years for us to be taking vacations on the moon. And then maybe I, will still be able to do it. I'm a little old guy, but, I'm a little old guy doing this right now. So
that's why I think the moon has to be a proving ground, because
I agree.
To leave the moon to go to Mars is effortless, really.
Yeah.
You don't, to move around in space, you can go out there and use air and just propel yourself. So it would make it easier, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a lot closer. If you run into problems, you've got rescue, is possible.
Yeah.
If you're on Mars, you're on your own, baby. That's you are on your own.
Yeah, it's game over.
You bump into some pathogen that's in the soil or something that you're stuck. But the moon, there's definite possibility of getting home or getting help. So that's why it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure why they are putting their eyes on Mars as a first place to go, because I don't think that's such a great idea.
Well, you realize that we're 2,000 years behind on technology. If you look at the ancient Greeks and their inventions, and all that was stopped when Rome marched in with Catholicism and put a halt to it because it's considered witchcraft or whatever it was at that time. We're 2,000 years behind the ball in technology.
It's considered alchemy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that we would, if we didn't have that, and the ancient Greeks and the Egyptians, they continue to invent stuff. Who knows where we'd be right now? 2,000 years is a long time to make stuff. Look what our phones are doing in a decade.
Yeah.
So
this is why I think that in 20 years, it's possible. Maybe I will get to the moon. Who knows?
I think sooner.
I think the odds are against me, but there's a possibility there. I'm not going to, say that I won't ever get to do that.
Listen,
and I'll take the trip.
You got to understand, Kennedy said, I want to get to the moon in this decade. And we did it in that timeline. And our technology was not what it is now. I think if we really wanted to, we'd go real soon.
Oh, yeah.
Really soon.
Well, and I think that things are getting to the point where we are going to have to. Right now, our eggs are all in one basket. It's a very dangerous way to live as a species. Every day I seem to find, another article from respected scientific magazines and such that say that, we're on the verge of collapse as a civilization, that something has to happen with us. And I will go along with all the futurists that came before me. I consider myself a futurist, and I think that getting off of the globe and into space and colonizing the asteroid belt, the Trojan points, and the moon, that's the way to go. The resources are there. It'll force us to bootstrap ourselves technologically and spiritually and socially. It would be equivalent to when people went to the Wild West at back in the late 1800s, and we did that. And here, I live here in Southern California. I couldn't imagine it being the wild, but it wasn't that long ago that it was Native Americans that lived here, and there was zero technology. There was well, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? I have to say that we are better than what was going on here before, but here we are, and it will be the same with going to the moon, I think, and the asteroids, and colonizing the Trojan points. Those are stable points where gravity will hold a space station there; it won't move. It's held gravatically by other larger bodies like the moon, the Earth. And there's a few of them, and there's stable points where we can build and not worry about them, being displaced or moving around or using retro jets or anything like that to keep them in place. It's a stable point in space.
On that point, and I'm glad we're going that direction. People, I've been asked by friends, when do you think the government's going to tell us more about UFOs? The truth, anyway. And I'll tell you what I think. Right now, more and more private industry is going to space. It's their little race. Mm-hmm. It's their competition. They're doing it. They're not getting the approval of whoever they need to get approved. So you can't send people in private industry up there, and they're going to see something. You can't silence them. That's impossible. In this day and age, with our technology and all the social media platforms, I don't see it happening. If they see something, it's going to spread like wildfire. I think they're going to, which is why I think this disclosure is being spoon-fed, but I think they're speeding it up a bit. You had people like Lou Elizondo come out. He's not speaking everything he can't. I respect that. Others are coming along very, very soon. I think in the near future, a lot of military people retired are going to be like, look, I got to say something. I'm not going to go to my deathbed like this. And then there's the private industry again. And private industry sees something. You can't stop that virus. There's no stopping it. That will spread fast. I think that's the case of now.
Is it at least 70 years that we've known that we aren't alone? It's been at least 70 years. It's longer than that, since Roswell and 1947, I guess it was Roswell. So, I mean, it's and then you have 1942, where you have the Battle of Los Angeles, which I do believe was a craft. We had somebody come, and a little old lady went public and talked about watching this saucer-shaped thing hovering over Los Angeles. I've got the case. One of our our old state director actually closed that case himself. It was Jeff Krause who closed that one as an unknown. And an amazing interview with this woman. And so we've known that we aren't alone. And my mom knew, and she told me, 1963, she told me this. So, and they certainly knew about it when they were working under the desert, and Howard Hughes knew about it. It's old news. I think that, that it's in some ways it's convenient for them to try to keep as much secret or be secretive about it. I think there's a lot of disinformation that's also forked out there to us. They love to keep us guessing. They don't want us to know exactly what is happening. I think some of it would scare the public, and I think other things would cause us to probably maybe even vote some of these guys out. That are more warlike and stuff.
Keep in mind, there's a lot of power lost there, right? Now, this could be said for here. Let's go tell a bunch of people that believe in God there's no God, and then they're like, well, why didn't I just kill that guy next door since I couldn't stand him? I'm not going to hell if there's no hell. You know what I mean? You lose some control there. Just like with the government. Right now, our government's really powerful, and we trust them, and they can protect us. But if they were to come out and say, look, there's something out here, we don't know what it is, and they're way stronger than us, and someone asks, well, how do we protect ourselves from it? They're like, we can't. You lose control.
That's what they'd have to say.
Control and control would come undone. Because people are like, well, what the hell am I worried about? The government? There are control factors there. I get all that. I think until we start getting to that point we were discussing earlier, where people are like, well, you can't view someone as a race or anything otherwise. You can't view them that way until we start looking at each other as a species. I think that's the blockade. That's the wall up. I think that's the prevention of it, personally.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yes, I think you're absolutely correct. If we still fight wars with each other and have prejudice because of the color of skin or life philosophy or sexuality or even that person's sex, how are we to go and have a relationship with a species that looks like 9-foot tall praying mantises?
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, there's no shot.
You would go and run.
Yeah,
it's screaming. I hear. I have one friend who was doing a CE5 thing and was successful. And this guy is a nuts and bolts UFO guy. He's not like a wacko guy, right? But he was doing over in Arizona, Phoenix MUFON. They were doing they were doing CE5 Star Watches, and he was very successful. And he got picked up by a freaking spaceship that was piloted by one of the 9-foot tall praying mantis guys. They did not tranquilize my friend. He was standing there, like leaning as far against the wall of the craft that he could get because he was scared. It was like a giant praying mantis. Everything that went through his mind, National Geographic specials where he watched mantises eating their mates' heads and stuff like that. And it was just xenophobia. And that was the biggest problem. And he felt embarrassed about it while he was feeling it, but it was such a human feeling. And it turned out they picked him up because they were amazed that we had telepathy. They wanted to know, how long have you guys been able to do this? Most humans don't bother. Why were you trying to contact us the way that you did? Because we heard you, and here you are. And he explained what they were doing and how long they've been doing it, that other people do it. And it was a very friendly, almost like a tete-a-tete kind of conversation between the two of them. And then he was more or less sent back down like you would, from the Starship Enterprise. He found himself back on the ground, and he went home with this amazing, amazing contact story. A lot of it he had to have brought back from hypnotic by being hypnotically regressed. But a lot of it he had retained. It wasn't all like missing time for him. And I loved his story because, I know that I would probably react the same way. I'd be angry at myself for reacting that way because I would like to think that, I'm an enlightened being, that I would be the person that you would want for the ambassador to the stars. That's what we need. But even I think I would have that fear factor because it's been ingrained in us and it's a part of us. And we're going to have to get over that. We're going to have to get over that towards ourselves first.
Yeah, that's that primitive part of our brain when we were trying to survive the large cats before we were really intelligent. It's still embedded into our DNA. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo. Like I talk to paranormal people. I talk to ufology people. I'm going to run at something. I've done it I have personally never witnessed anything. That's what got me in this, right? And what really solidified it for me are those videos from the government in 2017. To me, I was like, that's it. They're real. Now I got to know more.
Do you try CE5 stuff? You just meditate and just send out that you want to meet them. I would recommend that you refine that and say, I want to meet someone that's more humanoid and that's like us, that's benevolent. Yeah. I don't want to be probed. I don't want the.
And look, I'm willing.
You can tailor that way if you want.
I'm willing to negotiate. All right, if they're listening, probe away. Yeah. But what do I get out of it? All right, I know
it does work.
You got all this technology.
I will tell you, I can attest personally. I had an encounter when I first started at MUFON. I didn't think it was going to work. I did meditate when I was young, and I sent that thing out, and I was sending the message out for a couple of weeks, and one night I went up to our bedroom and I had an experience. They came through the wall. It was tall grays. It was actually very scary. They didn't give me a peaceful telepathic message. They took a lot of blood from me. They took a lot of energy from me, it felt like. And we had a series of 3 visits. I had the first one when I could finally move in our room, the light, it became dark again. I was screaming and yelling, and my wife was really mad. I mean, for her, it was just like, oh my God, you joined this crazy UFO group, and is this what I have to look forward to? Yep. A couple nights later, she had a similar experience. She doesn't remember the beings, but she certainly remembers the house flooding with light. She was shaking me awake and sort of pacing by the bed, saying, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the hell alone. She's used another word. I don't know if you like cussing on your show.
Listen. I don't have anyone that's going to sit here and like, oh, you can't. They say this and don't say that. There's no one here like that, so don't worry about it.
Okay, but anyway, she used the F word, and she was pretty freaked out. It was ontological shock, is how John Mack described it.
Right.
2 nights later, we both woke up to the room completely flooded with light with no source. There was no source for this light. It was inexplicable. We couldn't explain it. There was no natural way to explain it. We tried to. In fact, we were even prompted. We looked out the window and we saw light coming from above our house. And it was like this thought was put into both of our minds at the same time. Oh, it's just like a porch light somewhere. And we started laughing. We both heard it. It was in our minds. That was the only telepathy that was involved. And we both said synchronous. At the same time, we both looked at each other. We said, that's not a porch light. That's not a porch light. It's like our house is flooded with light in the whole neighborhood. And in this case, we actually had neighbors' porch lights were turning on. So I think other people could see the light. But you couldn't see the craft. It was above our house. This was in Burbank when we lived out there. My state director at the time, he was pretty much nuts and bolts guy, and I told him about my experience, and I was afraid he was going to fire me. It was not what he was looking to hear from his new field investigator. But I will tell you, it's an interactive phenomenon. And if you think that you're external or outside of the phenomenon, you're incorrect. It's not like we are looking at something on a microscope slide. We are on the slide ourselves. As soon as we see a UFO, there's interaction that takes place. And I've seen this from case to case to case, and I've seen it in my own interactions that I had with our visitors. And I had 2 sightings after that happened. They seemed like they were continuations of the first experience I had. I was being taught something about the phenomenon. I was being taught that it's in control, not myself. That if they want you to take a photograph, I guess you'll take one. But my cell phone didn't exist. I had like a close-up sighting of a craft, and then it changed dimensionally. It looked like it was 30 feet away, and then suddenly it looked like it was a mile away, and that it was almost a mile across the craft itself. And I know that there weren't, it wasn't in the papers or in the news report that night. So it apparently was for my eyes only. They're in control. They can create their own little bubble universe when you have an experience. And they're here to teach us stuff. And I think that they're here to evolve us, maybe forcefully, because we're not doing it fast enough.
Definitely not. Let me give you a little insight, or actually a theory on what happened with you. Here's what I think.
Yeah.
You've opened up the gateways. All right. Hey, I'm a willing participant. You say this to the universe. They reciprocate. They initially come in. It's like anything else. When you go in for any study. And so again, whenever I hear these things, I always think about what would our military do? What would our medical, they bring you in, they test your blood. They make sure you're fit for the program. They make sure you can psychologically handle the program. Then the green light. All right, this guy's good. His blood works back. He's psychologically sound. We can have him in the program. He's not going to snap as a result of our intervention, right? That happens, right? So that's step one. Yeah. You got the physical. You passed that test. Now, it's not like yesterday where when they're monitoring you, they don't really need to abduct anymore or even come to you at that point.
No,
your house is full.
I love them, and they know that.
Yeah,
I feel like they scanned my mind, that they knew my thoughts, they knew everything about me.
Right. So this is why I think,
love them. I've been looking for them all my life.
This is why abduction is slowing down. Everything in your house,
and it is slowing down.
Everything in your, and this is my theory why. We have more microphones, cameras, every reason in the world for them not to come here. They could just listen in on us whenever they feel like it. Initially, like you went through, you have to get the physical. We need his blood. We need to get his psychology. And then when you are seeing him, at that point, you have the ability to be select. In my opinion, I think you're selected because you volunteered for that. And so when people are like, well, how come no one's getting abducted anymore? So I did find patterns since 2012. The more of these, every computer, phone, everything you own has a camera, a microphone. I mean, everything. Your Ring, the thing that watches your house. Alexa right now can hear me. I'm sure I just said that. She's reacting. They could monitor us without the really being there. So and initially, like I said, you volunteered. They came in. They did their physical. You checked out, and now you're part of the program. And your contact may be minimal or may be greater from here on forward.
Most of the abductions that we get now, it's not like a DNA farming mission like it used to be. It used to all be about DNA. It was, farming ova and sperm from males. And perhaps this can account for some of the avatar humanoid bodies that are spoken of, around the phenomenon. But what seems like it has changed, the paradigm has changed. It seems almost like it's a teachable moment now. People are getting downloads when they're abducted or visited. And it's usually visits rather than abductions now. People are still taken every now and then, but usually it's a visit. And it seems to me like perhaps they're trying to change our baseline reality, that we have this very boxed in, narrow-minded idea of what reality is. And so we need words like paranormal, right? Whereas it should be just, we have to expand our idea of what normal is. And I think that's what they're doing, that they're pulling the rug out from under our reality and leaving the dishes in place, right? Yeah. Like a magician will do. But it'll still drop your jaw when you see somebody pull that tablecloth out,
of course.
It knows how to do that. And that's what they're doing. They're pulling the reality out from under us like a rug or a tablecloth but letting us stand. But they want to change what we see our baseline reality is. That's what they're doing.
Well, you got to understand too. an abduction from a long time ago, from like just 20 years ago till now. Like, all right, here, look at the Apple, the iPhone, the evolution of that in 10 years. Now figure something that's of higher intelligence and what their evolution's like for their technology. The abduction might have changed. They're evolving. They have better technology coming. There's 4 aliens sitting in a room somewhere arguing like, no, this is going to work better. Trust me. They're fighting for a patent on something that's going to be able to get these uploaded downloads, right? So you got to imagine, again, as they evolve, so does their technology. And if they're well advanced in us, then their technology, the sky's the limit. You don't know what's happening. And again, we made it too easy for them. We have so many my house alone, if someone were to spy on me, it would be effortless. Effortless. They could do it with ease. An amateur could tap in. I personally
believe that they're living here side by side with us. I think that there are people that we work with, that we see, that are fully human, but came from somewhere else. That's just a personal belief, but I've heard some stuff from some people.
Yeah, but Earl, that's not crazy talk. You understand?
No, it's not crazy talk.
We're doing that.
What I'd do if I were an alien, if I were a non-human and I wanted to understand us, I would live amongst us. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, but listen, what you're talking about has been happening forever. We do it. We send people other countries all the time to go there and not just spy, live there, grow families, become part of the community, and then feed information back to the source. That's been going on with man. Now imagine a higher intelligence.
There's a few people I've met, and a couple of them have been very upfront about it. They've told me who they are. One was over the phone, but it was the most interesting conversation that I've ever had. This guy who's independently wealthy and kind of travels around on a motorcycle, but he goes everywhere. Money is not an issue. Just a really interesting, sweet, smart guy who says he's an alien.
I don't doubt it.
Us. And he said, I read a lot of your stuff, Earl. I listen to you when you're on podcasts and stuff, and I like the way you think. You're more correct than you probably know yourself. And I just kind of wanted you to let you know that. And it was just funny how the guy got a hold of me. It was through MUFON, and I rather believe him. He didn't sound like a crazy person. I meet people I would consider, clinically, I'm a nurse and I have a background, in psych tech stuff. So I can kind of recognize when somebody isn't thinking straight. This guy was 100% there. He was an intellectual, but his origin was off planet, quite literally. And since then, I've met a couple of other people, and one is the provenance behind the one person is crazy. It's Pentagon and stuff like that. And the aliens, the people I have met so far that say that they are aliens, I've liked them. I've liked them very, very much. They seem intelligent. They have a sense of humor. They love humanity, they seem to love us. They want us to do better, and if that's who's coming here and that's who's trying to help us change, I think we're in good hands. I mean,
I don't disagree. Listen, my brother is a psychologist, right? PhD, master's, blah, blah, blah. He's a super intelligent, very kind, very considerate person. He really cares about humanity. He doesn't fit into my family at all. I think he's an implant. I mean,
maybe he is.
He's because you know what I mean? Like he's the one in our whole bloodline that just doesn't fit the mesh. And he says everything about him is special. He's a really intelligent guy. And yet, you look at me and some of my other siblings and cousins, like there's no way those guys are related. You know what I mean? So maybe he is an alien. And that's probably how they would implant. Again, everything you talk, I want people to understand. When people start saying that's crazy talk, look what we do and then scale it up a lot with more intelligence, right? Everything that you hear aliens doing, we're already doing. We have been doing it. This didn't start new. Yeah. This dates back to the Egyptians and the Greeks. Send one of ours over there and let them blend in and blah, blah, blah. That's just how it works. That's how you infiltrate, and you do it subtly. Because if you were to go walking to the door, blah, 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 and this is me, well, you're going to get the curtains fast. that you
look into the Friends case that happened in Italy back early 1960s, late 50s, early 60s. There was a whole town that apparently there was an alien base that was underground. These aliens were humanoid. They looked like us. Some were very tall, 9 foot tall, giants, more or less. There's photographs from these encounters. And the town would they helped them to survive here. It was a mission that they were on. And they were here for a couple of years and then they left. But it's a well-founded case. John Mack certainly thought it was an interesting one. Timothy Good wrote extensively about it in his last book. Very interesting case. But if you just Google the Friends case, UFOs, Friends case, Italy, it'll pop up. It's very interesting. And they were living amongst us and just they passed for humans because in every way, shape, and form, they looked like us. Enjoyed good wine, music, and, they were people you would want to be associated with.
Yeah. Listen, again.
How about that, huh?
When people say, this sounds crazy, understand, and look, I'm not saying, if the government's listening, I'm not saying anything other than there's people right now living in Russia and or living here that have been here for decades. They're a third generation family that still work for the other team. That is just a reality. And so when you think about what aliens are doing, it makes sense. So what's the best way for us to be among them? Well, guess what? A lot of the earlier abductions, you were part of a project, they're thanking you for their contribution. Now there's people here among us that you would otherwise not give a second glance to. That's just how it has to. And this isn't evil. I
agree with you on this 100%. I think that it's absolutely true, and that I think it's happening. I think that, and it's what I would do. Yeah. If I were, just if you're intelligent, it's the only way to go. You have to go and live amongst them, to be like them, to learn about them, and that's, I believe, what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I reference a lot of this for people, right? If you went and told National Geographics that you could right now, hey, guess what? You could get that cheetah and put your conscience in it and go live amongst the cheetahs. Look, done. They won't even think about it. Hell yeah. It made that observation of that species really easy. And that's at the end of the day, that's what I believe ultimately was taking place.
Yeah.
Before we close, I want to discuss one more thing with you.
Certainly.
A case that might have bothered you or frightened you.
Oh, I've got one.
Right.
Hold on 1 second. I have one loaded up for you for some reason. I don't know. We must have been telepathy going on before we started this.
I've been accused of this.
I have this loaded up to the case file. I had a case a couple years ago that was very disturbing to me. It was CMS 99018 for anybody out there that's familiar with our case management system at MUFON. This was a Marine that was in I think I could tell you, it was Camp Pendleton out here, one of the major Marine bases in Southern California. This happened quite a few years ago. It was during the Vietnam War was still going on. It was in the 70s. But I'm just going to read a little bit from his case file. This is his own words. I was at a group party with a couple of guys from work. I was a Marine with the United States Marines at the time. We finished up doing what we were doing. We were playing with a Ouija board, which I don't agree with. So I left the party that I was at. It was around 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night, and I had a 20-mile ride back to base. I was driving my 66 Ford Satellite, which I was really proud of, which is kind of a hot rod. I'm a car guy. He's a nice guy.
I like that.
Anyway, I was driving, and I heard a voice. It was plain as day. I thought it was my radio at first. The voice said that I needed to lie down, I needed to sleep. Now, this voice kept going in and out. I really thought it was something on the radio. I did have the radio playing in my car. Then I saw something. It was a strange light. It was coming from out in the orchard that I was passing. Suddenly, there were electric tendrils of light, like you see with a Tesla coil. This electricity was coming out from my dashboard. It was everywhere in the car, and I was horrified. I mean, I love this car. I couldn't figure out what was going on. The car started slowing down by itself. It slowed way down and then it stopped in the middle of the road and it wouldn't start up again. Well, I'm a car guy, so I jumped out of the thing. I was saying a few choice words, maybe a lot of choice words. I popped the hood. I looked in there with a flashlight. I looked at the wires. I tightened things. It was strange. There was nothing wrong with the engine. This took about half an hour. I got back into the car and it started right up. I put my tools away. I drove back to the base and the voice returned, told me to go lay down. I got to my barracks. It was just me and my barracks mate. The other two guys were on leave. It was Friday night. I went to bed and my buddy asked me why I was going to bed so early. I couldn't really give him an answer. I went to bed with my clothes on top of the rack, covered myself with a blanket. As soon as I covered myself, maybe 15 minutes later, I felt like I was pulled up to and then out through the ceiling. It was the strangest sensation I've ever had. It was physical, not in my mind, not like my mind drifting off or anything like that. I wound up in something odd like a dentist's office, except it was all metallic and smooth. There was something that looked like a garage door, but it went sideways. It was on its side. It opened up sideways like an accordion. It rolled backwards like that when something put its hands on my shoulders. Now I was standing in an upright position. Something touched me with something metallic, and I felt like I had been shocked, some kind of energy, and then I was paralyzed. I could move my eyes, I could move my voice, but I couldn't move my arms or my legs, and I was still standing. I heard a voice said, "We have total control over you now. We can control your body." I was being looked at, stared at. There were a bunch of eyes looking at me. There was something behind me that was taller than me. At first, I thought it was the devil, since we had been playing with a Ouija board. But later I realized that this was something way beyond. The voice was telepathic. It was in my mind. The creatures had very tiny mouths like slits. The voice was in my head. The voice said, "We have total control of your body. We can make you do whatever we need you to do." And I told them, no, you can't. When all of a sudden I lost control of myself. I couldn't even speak. The creature behind me had a hand on each of my shoulders. I tried to turn. I wanted to see what he looked like, and he said, "Don't even try it. You can't do it. We will now control your mind." And everything went dead within me. It was as though he were speaking English to me, but I don't think he was speaking an actual language. It was just in my mind. The thing behind me said, "We've taken your mind and your body, and now we're going to take your soul." As soon as he said that, well, I was a born-again Christian, and that's why I left when the guys started playing with the Ouija board. I started saying in my mind, "No, you can't have my soul. You can't have my soul." I started praying and praying, but the thing kept saying that he was going to take my soul. When he said soul, I knew that he meant my inner self, that he would own me somehow. I fought that. They wanted to put my inner self into some kind of containment, and I wasn't having any of that. So I fought for my life, for my soul, with my own mind. I felt like I wanted to fight physically, too. I was trying to turn my head. I was trying to move my arms, but I couldn't. The big creature was in charge. He was behind me, and I was finally able to turn my head, and I saw him, and he looked like those gray aliens, only taller. I started crying. I was going to pieces, yet I fought with him in my mind. Next thing you know, I'm coming to, like I'm waking up on the barracks floor. It was 5 a.m. My bunkmate was yelling at me, shouting, "What the hell happened to you?" My bunkmate said that he looked for me after I'd gone to bed, that he didn't see me in there, that he thought that I'd left the base again because I wasn't in my bunk. So I was physically taken. It wasn't an out-of-body thing that happened to me. I was completely covered in sweat. It was puddled on the floor from the top of my head to the soles of my shoes. He said that I could have been run out, that I had red splotches as well as black spots covering my body. He said my eyes were completely dilated, totally black. My bunkmate didn't want to see my face as it was contorted. He tried to keep me away from the mirror. He didn't want me to see my face as well. But I insisted, and I saw my eyes were totally black. They were all pupil, no surrounding iris. I had black and red marks all over my face and body. I looked like I'd been to hell and back. I'm going to go down here just a little bit. He said, "You have to understand, I was shaking and crying, but I was pure military, a Marine, a U.S. Marine. We don't cry. We don't shake. This was so abstract to him to find me in such a condition. But I was a complete mess, a complete basket case for 5 to 6 hours. It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, and I fought in Vietnam. Anyway, I ended up staying in my room the whole day. I was on leave, so I didn't have to go right back to work. It took me 2 days to get back to normal and to try to get past what happened to me. It took me about a week to get my mind back to where I wasn't completely engulfed with fear and confusion. And he goes on and talks about, how he had a couple of other experiences in his life, but never like that. And this guy got, in talking with him, Adam, I believe that he came in touch with some of our more malevolent visitors.
I got an idea. I've listened to that. And so here's what I do. Before I analyze something, I put myself in that person's shoes. I try to evaluate what their life is. This guy's a career military, sounds like.
Yeah.
So you got to understand, what I hear is that the being that had him spoke to him like a military guy. Like, you think how the Marines talk to each other amongst command? It's not pleasant. Yeah. So they're only trying to communicate with him the way he best understands, which to him is military commands. That's exactly, the way they're instructing him, the way they spoke to him. It sounded like a sergeant speaking down to one of their soldiers. And perhaps they put him in play, again, like you. You got your physical, he got his physical. Now he's off to do whatever project he's a part of. And now you're talking some time ago. The evolution of their technology, not what it is today. They
tried to break him. I think they tried to break him. Yeah. I mean, I spoke with all of his family members, and they said, the one daughter said, Dad has had PTSD. I've known this all my life. We didn't always have a word for it, but now we do. But it wasn't from being in Vietnam.
It's from that experience.
No, it's from that experience.
Yeah, they spoke to him, and I don't know that they did it to be malevolent. I think they did it because that's what he's used to hearing, and that's the type of command he's used to taking. Unfortunately, what they didn't make room for is that, I don't care if you're a Marine or not, when you see something parallel to the normal, especially a Marine and a Christian, parallel to the normal, it's a shock to the brain, to the soul, to it all. It's a shock, so.
He was going to see it as malevolent and evil regardless, unless it appeared like an angel,
Yeah, he had push. Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of pushback, no doubt. So, but everything the way he just, in his words, sounds like he was being spoken to as a military sergeant,
Having gone through something, my own experience was scary, but looking at it, it wasn't so much scary from the acts of, they were very businesslike. It was just scary because I had expectations.
Yeah.
I had an expectation that I had read accounts where people were told that they were going to be safe, that it's just going to be a little while and it's all going to go back to normal and don't worry, and I didn't get that. And perhaps, we bring ourselves and our own personalities to the table in these experiences, just like we do in psychotropic experiences. One person will take a psychotropic drug and they'll see God and they'll have like a beautiful life-changing experience. Another person will feel like they went to hell, same drug, same amount, everything, but it's kind of what you bring to the table yourself. So that you may be correct about this.
Yeah, I mean, people are
Kathleen Marden extensively about this case, by the way.
Yeah, I'd spoken to her recently. I'm going to have her on again. In fact, I should probably have the both of you on together.
Yeah. Kathleen's she's who got me into MUFONs. I'm a ERT member, and she recruited me. Yeah, she recruited me for the ERT.
I like her a lot.
I love Kathleen. Yeah, I have more respect for her than probably anybody else in the. There's people I love and respect, but she's up in the top tier. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, she's got a really wonderful perspective, right? She sees things from a different plane.
She believes that there's some entities that are actually renegade. Yeah, she doesn't think that that's normal. I've talked with other people. One of the people that says that they're an alien told me as much. That there are those that are renegades, and we don't put up with them. And if we can stop them, we do. And oftentimes we do stop them. I said, well, how do you stop them? And she told me, we put them in a box. I said, what do you mean? Like a real physical box? She said, well, that's the best I could explain.
Listen, when you think about the most disciplined species on this planet, what comes to mind?
The most what?
The most disciplined.
Disciplined?
Yeah, like
ants, probably.
Yeah, ants,
Yeah.
bees, hornets. Those are the most disciplined. Now, when they have a rogue, and they do, I watch a lot of documentaries, so you wouldn't believe it, man. I got to tell you, when they go rogue, some of them, they kill them, period. But they do go rogue. Some of them, for whatever reason, even as well programmed by nature that they are, DNA wise, some of them just go rogue, and they go off the charts. They attack others, and they have to be put down. That's the ant colony. We don't do that amongst humans because there'd be no one left. But the point
I was told by this person that they would be put in a box, that we don't put up with that.
Yeah.
There's things that we put up with, and there's things we don't put up with, and we don't put up with that. And,
there's a lot of answers.
A local case where a woman felt like she was being sexually assaulted by a being. And I actually had this person go and ask through her network, which whatever that is, I can't tell you, Adam. I don't know. What kind of a network does an alien in a human body have? But I asked, and she said that best to her knowledge that there was not a rogue that was in Southern California doing this, and that this woman was mistaken or looking for attention or something. She asked me, how's your BS monitor? But she said that if somebody does do something like that it's stopped immediately. And the way they do it is we put them in a box. That was the best that she could explain it, or the best that she was willing to explain it to me.
I can tell you why that is. I can tell you exactly why that is. This is my theory anyway.
Yeah.
That's a really expensive machine. We're not willing to throw it away. We got to figure out what the hell went wrong with it. Put it in the box,
Or maybe it's like the Superman movie where they put the guys in the little...
Listen, when the military has a fighter jet that's not performing to standard, it doesn't get scrapped. Let's figure this out. That's really expensive. We're not replacing that. We got to figure it out. Same, there's, I don't know. These are my theories. My imagination will run wild, but I always base things on what I see in nature and what I do. And if you want to ask about what their behaviors are, look at our government, look at our military, look, everything could be explained by things we already see. It's really that easy. It's just at a greater scale, a much greater scale.
You do think scientifically, Adam, you see, that is absolutely scientifically, thinking things scientifically.
Yeah. I have like a default to logic mind. But then that's why I make room for the belief in these. Because again, when I hear people's story, and I do a lot of off podcast interviews, I hear everything. I mean, everything. But I always I don't doubt anyone. I don't turn away anyone. I don't think there's any bad information. I just think you have to learn how to filter correctly. I approach nothing with blindfolds on. So I listen to everybody. And when I hear these things, the first thing I do is, well, would this be a military application? Have we observed this in the animal kingdom? What do we do as humans? What has our government done in the past? You have to evaluate from that and then scale up large, because this is an advanced race being alleged. So, Earl, I had a great time talking to you.
Me too. It was a fun talk.
It really was. It was fantastic.
Went deep here, didn't we? I went deeper than I usually do on these things. So that says a lot. Thank you so much.
Indeed. I appreciate your time. We will talk in the future real soon.
Thank you. And just for your listeners, if you've had an experience, you've seen something, an object in the sky, go to MUFON.com. It says report a UFO. There's also a link there that's, report an abduction. If you're in California, I will see your report because I see every single report that comes into Southern California anyway. If you're Northern California, my friend Ruben Uriarte will see it. But anywhere that you live, MUFON is a worldwide organization, and MUFON.com is where you want to go and report what you have seen or experienced.
Fantastic. Earl, you've been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You too, Adam. You have a great rest of the week.
You too, sir.
All right. Bye now.